So, on to the first car. We have the Gauntlet Akira Resto mod by Red. Overall, this was a pretty good car to drive. There weren't too many issues on the road, it had with parts of the tracks. Yeah, it, apart from a couple of mistakes, it was fine. Like that. Wasn't too much of an issue usually in this car. But yeah, just carry a bit too much speed and you cause issues. Unlike this part of the track, these bumps in the road here can seriously upset this car. I think it's because it doesn't really have enough suspension travel to deal with these bumps, so the back just gets thrown up in the air, and yeah, it comes down hard. Meanwhile, these long bumps caused quite a few issues. You carry a lot of speed going over it, and then when you come back down, the car doesn't really have enough suspension travel to really smooth out the bump. Anyway, yeah, these downhill bumps here, another example of suspension travel just not being enough. Yeah, you go down here, and if you're carrying way too much speed, as I kind of were on these early runs, the bottle would just go boom. Other than that, though, the track was, fairly simple in this car. As you see now on my timed run, I wasn't too serious about the timed runs here. I gave the car a few runs, and once I got what I thought was a decent enough run for this car, or, when I got bored of this car, yeah, I'd stop. Just as a thing, the nicer your car was to drive, the more likely I was to give it another run. Yeah, not totally fair, I know, but in a case like this, where the bottle just seemed to explode somewhat randomly sometimes, yeah, I was just like, yeah, I'm bored of this car now, I'm going to move on. So anyway, yeah, those bumps at the beginning of the course that you saw, this car handled really well. The smaller bumps in general, actually, this car was just really happy to deal with. It was when the bumps were quite a big jolt that the car would really be upset on. It couldn't deal with massive bumps, really, but the smaller bumps, the suspension smoothed out really nicely, and it made for definitely driving across some of the maybe uneven terrain, but it was still mostly flat, quite good. So stuff like little potholes and little bumps on the road, it smoothed out fine and meant that you could be fairly confident as long as there weren't any major bumps. If there were, you just had to sort of take it with a bit of caution. It didn't mean that I couldn't push as much as I would have liked to on some of the harsher bumps. As you see in this final section now, I do kill off quite a lot of speed, just because I'm not totally confident in this car's ability to go down these massive bumps. And yeah, as the exhaust pipe explodes there, yeah, those pipes fall off fairly easily in Beam. But yeah, just sort of having to be really careful down these bumps. I don't want to risk the bottle exploding on me. Once I'm out of that, the final section you can be somewhat confident with. Again, I was being a bit cautious because at this point I was getting a bit tired of driving this car. Yeah, I got a decent run in here. You can carry quite a bit of speed over there, a bit more than you'd sort of expect, and then over this final bump I just saw Dukes of Hazzards over it and it was fine. Anyway, it's at a 2:35.11, which I think's a decent time. So, car 2, the Armour Motors Anvil, and well, immediately with this car there was a problem in its small size. Even though this is the longer wheelbase variant of this car, or this body style, yeah, the bed wasn't really long enough, as you can see, and the bottle had some issues getting into it. The beds in BeamNG are a bit weird and aren't entirely sort of correct. They're not how they look like they should be. The hitboxes are a bit funny, so the bottle sort of gets stuck in them, and that happens. which is fun. In the end, well, I started experimenting with different ways of laying out the bottle. First of all, I tried hooking it out the top, and that did badly. Eventually, I found a way of just lying it down, and tried that, and starting to go well. Unfortunately, this car isn't exactly the easiest to drive. It's very good at keeping the bottle safe over the bumps, but it's not the most stable things. Then I managed to get the bottle to flip over the roof as I was trying different ways of hooking it down, which yeah, went well. The bottle is surprisingly heavy. I haven't weighed it out, but you can definitely feel that weight on it. It does influence the way the car handles, and yeah, it does. It can upset the handling quite a lot. So where you put it, and if it like falls out, it can heavily influence the car. Here, I just get on the brakes way too late, and again, big explosions. And then through the chicane, well, the car this loose will quite happily spin like that. And yeah, this car was just very unstable. It was very nice across the bumps, absolutely. Yeah, went over the bumps just fine, but yeah, it just wasn't stable. Also, yeah, in these last couple of runs, for some reason the car kept losing wheels. I'm not quite sure why, but yeah, it started losing wheels really quickly. So, on to the final run, and yeah, this car was pretty decent to drive. Ish. It was, if you kept it all stable, it was fine. But yeah, it was just, as you can see, like when it lands from bumps, it can sort of randomly be thrown in a direction, which means that it's very tricky to drive on the limit. But it does cope with the bumps fantastically. The bottle has no issues most of the time on these heavy bumps. Most of the times it's just been that I've sort of lost control of the vehicle. So yeah, it's rather good over those bumps. It does cope with it fantastically. The suspension has so much travel in it, and it's so soft that it just sort of soaks up the bumps, and yeah, runs across those dips rather nicely. I definitely had quite a lot of confidence hitting these bumps with this car, at least compared to some of the other vehicles, especially later on. So yeah, I cannot really afford to push this car out the bumps, but the problem is that I have no confidence in sort of going quickly because I'm not sure what it'll do. I think I did take a bit of damage from that large bump, and I think, did I knock the steering out slightly? I think I did. Anyway, yeah, coming to these dips now, I go nice and carefully into here. I think I went maybe a bit slow on here. I did get it caught on the front there, but I don't know, I was happy enough with these runs. These runs aren't perfect by any means, but I don't know. I think this was a run that represented this car fairly well. Yeah, it copes well with the bumps, and that's quite good. Easy to transport the bottle, but if you're in a hurry, there are probably better options than this. Just having that safety of going quickly. But yeah, across the line, and the suspension collapsed, which was entertaining. Looks almost a bit like a funny car now, or some sort of dragster. But yeah, that was just a bit weird. On to the next car. So, from Echo Waffle 8, the big truck. Yeah, this was interesting, and the first problem is, as you can see, the bull bars used on the back, sort of as a clever catch for the bottle. They're not an object, and yeah, they don't really do much in the way of keeping the bottle down. If I didn't have to connect the bottle down, and they did have a hitbox, they'd be fine. but they aren't. Anyway, on the first run, I did actually get it to this section where I just carried too much speed in, and then just exploded the bottle. And as you can see, yeah, the sort of bed covers do just blow it off, just blow off from the explosion. Anyway, going over the bumps, the back's thrown up a bit, but for the most part it's alright. And then I just hit a bump a bit funny, and I think, I don't know, some weirdness with the hitboxes, and it just sets it off. Anyway, yeah, again in this section, and again the same thing happens. It's just, yeah, you really, it just sort of, you get into the same things quite a lot. They're bouncing it. A lot of things seem to happen from this this truck bottoming out and setting the bottle off, or at least landing from a harsh bump, and yeah, setting things off again at the end now, and just trying to keep it slow, keep it careful, and surprisingly I managed to run over that bump there. But there, just carry a bit too much speed, and then just on the landing. It's weird that it's always on the landing. I do wonder if there's something weird going on with the rear suspension or something that's like clipping through and hitting the bottle. Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah. As we come on to the timed run, you can see the back of it bouncing around quite a lot. Yeah, the back of it did like to bounce around a fair bit, and I do get it quite squirrely over those bumps, but yeah, for the most part, this car was fine to drive. There was nothing particularly bad about it. It was just sort of meh. You know, it had the problem where bottoming out made the bottle explode, but that was just a case of drive a bit slower. I wouldn't say it had issues with any massive issues with the bumps, as long as you hit them at a careful and steady speed. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was particularly fun to drive, but as something safe and fairly simple to drive, it was alright. Yeah, I don't know, just sort of driving it quickly, nothing outstanding. But yeah, coming to these big bumps now, again the back gets thrown about quite a lot. I do wonder if it's just really front heavy. Potentially is the reason that the back is just flying about so much, even more so than like some of the other vehicles, because yeah, well, we did have many you know, well, all the cars were pickup trucks, none of them were flying about this much, so yeah, I do wonder if it's big heavy engine in the front. I mean, the back's surprisingly light and easy to throw about, or maybe something to do with the suspension. Yeah, perhaps it's just a bit stiff. But coming on to the final section, I do go in quite aggressive on that first one, carrying a bit more speed, but the next one I am a bit more cautious about, and again the final drop down, and just a slight incline down as we come back up towards the steps. Steps not really too much of an issue. Again, I wanted to be kind of careful on there, not to bounce down too hard, although that part made me a bit nervous. Yeah, again, just the back bouncing, but then Dukes of Hazzard it at the end, and a big explosion. So yeah, that was pretty good. Okay then, onto the Marquez PXQ by El Bruno, and oh, this was shocking. It was, yeah, not good. The low utes in general struggled quite badly, but this being the first to go was not fun. You can see it going over those short bumps there and just getting chucked about by the bumps. It just can't cope with them. So yeah, I had lots of issues with the bottle, as you can imagine. The tiny bed and some weird hitboxes, and it was just a bit weird and would just sometimes randomly explode if I didn't get it right. In fact, that happened a lot, an awful lot, as you can see, and it's just sort of yeah, I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe sometimes I hit a bump the wrong way, well, in that case, actually, I just sort of got it wrong and did a rather spectacular flip. So, can't blame the car for everything. But, yeah, just sort of not aligning the bottle right. I think at that time it was bouncing against the wheel, but still. And then just these bumps. I think that time it just hit a bump and that set the bottle off. Here, sliding after the chicane. Again, the bumps just throw it up in the air and I go off. I think this was far too stiff and far too low for how tough the course was, which meant I could never really push it. It is, I'd say this is quite a fast car, or has the potential to be, but yeah, it just explodes all the time, constantly, or gets just chucked about by the bumps and then launched into space. Yeah, the Boost and Ethanol space program. You send in our cars, I'll launch them up while trying to do time attack runs. There, a minor pothole that hadn't bothered any other car before it. And, yeah, just set up. And then low ride height bit it on these inclines. Well, declines. And, yeah, it just bottomed out because of how rough it is. And just can't really cope with it, which is a bit of a shame, as I do think it is a fairly fast car as we come onto the final run. And yeah, as you can see, I've stacked the bottle upwards. I kind of feel like this is a bit cheaty because it is really hard to set off the bottle, but I just had no trust in this. You can see how hard and how early I'm slowing down for these bumps. Whereas other cars, you'd keep accelerating up until the braking point for the turn. Here, you just really couldn't. You needed to keep speed low. And again, just over these bumps. It's a lightweight and decently powerful car, but I can't make use of that because I don't trust it. I think, you know, just having a car that I'm happy to keep going with. It took me 55 minutes to get this run, and by now I was tired, so I was just going to take whatever run got me to the finish line, which in this case ended up with me bottoming out. That's how tired I was of this car. And yeah, got caught again. Maybe not the fairest of runs, but at this point I just wanted to get it over with. This car was painful to keep trying to get around. So I soldiered on after that. To be honest, I think even if that hadn't happened, it would have been one of the slower ones. Yeah, I hit that bump quite quickly actually, and then the back just randomly gets chucked up in the air, and again, just over these bumps, you've got to be a bit careful. I am getting kind of aggressive over those ones. And yeah, this nice long straight where you can make use of this car, the speed, and then big braking zone, which, you know, it's a lightweight car, so it does stop decently well, I think. Yeah, then down these bumps, and yeah, as you've already seen, the low ride height really causes issues here. You can see it just sort of stopping and hitting the bumps on the way down. I go far left this time to try and avoid bottoming out, and yeah, I do get something, and then just careful up towards the steps. At this point now, I don't think I'd ever gone the bottle to the steps, so I had no idea where this was going at this point. Just this car was killing me, so I just wanted to get it over with, so just nice and careful, you know, doing everything I can to not do anything insane. And yeah, it's yeah, just there we go. Not a great car to drive. It was fine on tarmac, but otherwise, no thanks. Next, from Flip 7144 is the KLM third. This was, well, it was a bit of a meme entry that was maxed out on reliability. Reliability 90 is still impressive, by the way, considering the rather tight constraints. Yeah, this wasn't going to go well. Low red line and incredibly bouncy suspension. I mean, it had a drivability of 6. This wasn't going to go well, and as you can see, I managed to get the bottle strapped to the roof. I'm not entirely sure how that happened. I can't remember now. It has been a while since I've driven. I'm sorry for the delay. But yeah, I think this was a car where the problem was the bed was too big, and as I catch lots of air there, yeah, you could see the bottle just sort of bouncing about everywhere in it. Although there, actually it deals alright. Surprisingly, a big problem for this was these bumps. I do manage to stall it as I get caught, but yeah, it just couldn't pull itself over the bumps. It kept bottoming out. I'm not sure if that's just because of the ridiculously low red line, but every time I hit it, it just got caught on the bumps and couldn't get past, really. Either it'd like bottom out thanks to the long wheelbase and ridiculous size, or yeah, it would just sort of dip one wheel in, and then I just couldn't pull it out. There again, bottoming out. I did manage to get past a couple of times, and then soft suspension meant that it just slammed down on the ground and blew up the bottle. Yeah, you can see just the way the bottle bounces with the suspension. It doesn't really absorb the bumps, it just sort of puts them through the bottle. I think that's the advantage of having a smaller bed. The bottle does tend to get trapped a bit. Anyway, I did eventually set a run. And I didn't quite notice this at the time, but yeah, you saw I accidentally blew up a bottle in the bed, and I was just so focused on getting a run that, yeah, I didn't really notice that it was damaged until I sort of midway through the run, and I started noticing the car was pulling slightly. But, yeah, this car wasn't really fast enough for that to make too much of a difference. It was, yeah, certainly, I mean, that low red line really was painful to drive, I'll be honest. Yeah, just sort of constantly having to change gears, such short gear ratios, but just not having any power to use it. I find a sort of sweet spot through those bumps to get past the dips. And yeah, overall, it's just hard to drive, just because it's so heavy, but feels underpowered. And yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, really, because I don't know, something like this that is just sort of simple and boaty, it could be nice to drive. I mean, Echo Waffle with the big truck, you know, that was big and boaty, but that was, I don't know, I think that's sort of coped with the bumps nicely. I think with some suspension tuning and maybe some changes in the tyre choice, this could maybe have some potential in at least coping with bumps well. I do get it stuck thanks to the open differentials, so I just lock them for the end. That's the advantage of having an LSD. I don't need to sort of change that if I do get it caught. I didn't run these cars with like lock diffs if I had the option for it though. I just sort of did it if I did get them caught, but yeah, by now I was getting bored of this car, so yeah, I'm willing to push it a bit and get it over and fly up into the air, and yeah, there we go. It's a thing for certain. Anyway, next was T. Passotti with the ITA 370 Ute. I think I remember that correctly. And again, it's a Ute, so bottle goes boom, 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 just from being in the bed. And yeah, just sort of trying to find places because I'd sort of lost the sweet spot, and I think this was maybe slightly shorter. I'm not quite sure actually. But yeah, as you can see, I've properly wedged it in there, and as I sort of try and make it break free to sort of be a bit fair, it explodes. But anyway, I eventually just sort of set it up the same as the other car, as the other ute even, and yeah, have the bottle upright just to get it over and done with, because I know how this is going to be. It was about as stiff as the other one, but I do get it fairly far in the course, and then that happens. But I do some rather spectacular flips there, so that's cool. Again, the bumps causing some issues, as it just sort of bottoms out and then blows up. Yeah, just sort of dealing with the bumps was a big problem for these, just because they are so low, and I'm pretty sure it is just bottoming out and shaking up the bottle that way. At least that's the only explanation I can think of for it. But yeah, because of that, I just had to be so careful and didn't really want to push it, which is sort of an issue when you're trying to do time attacks, that you're not sort of comfortable with pushing the car to the limit, because you know you're just going to end up blowing it up, having to start again. I don't like to rely on luck with a car. So yeah, that was a bit of a problem. Again though, when it was flat, although yeah, as you can see, right height and open differentials, I do just blow it out, pulling it out of there, and it's still stuck even though it's lost some weight. Yeah, when it is sort of on nice smooth ground, it does actually, it drives alright. It does feel sort of like a car, which is good, but yeah, sort of you've got to slow down so much for the bumps again. Like you just don't want to push it, don't want to try and take the car to its limits. It's sort of, yeah, part of this is sort of giving me a car I'm comfortable with driving quickly, and that I can do fairly quickly, because you know, when the time starts going, I gave every car unlimited runs, and basically it kept doing it until I either got bored and then set a time. So yeah, give me a nice car to drive, and it won't take I won't get bored as quickly. There we go. But yeah, got it over the bumps, I think mostly thanks to that bottle placement. If I had it lying down, it just wouldn't work at all. But yeah, got it around there. Again, that minor pothole just chucks it up in the air. But over the long bumps, it's not too bad. Again, just sort of taking it nice, slow and smoothly, making sure not to upset the car too badly, and then we've got this nice long run down the straight, and yeah, it gets up to some pretty good speed, almost getting to 80 miles an hour there, which may be one of the fastest speeds. I haven't actually been checking, but yeah. And then we come to here where I just have no confidence that this car's going to make it. Not sure if I ever made it to this section before the fastest run, which just, yeah, it's just so much difficulty in just trying to get this car around the course. And I do get it caught and almost bottomed out. I do just about have enough traction to pull myself off there. And yeah, up to the stairs, which yeah, I am slightly worried about bottoming out on, so I just take it nice and carefully, making sure not to get too much airtime. And well, final one, I launch up into the air, and yeah, the car puts itself in the lake for me. I do try holding it there, and I give the car its fate, basically. Next up, from Naya 8, is the Rhino, and this was, well, despite its sort of meme the massive exhaust on the bonnet, and just generally massive size, it was alright. Honestly, the biggest issue I had with it was just lack of grip. It was surprisingly easy to break traction and spin on the first run. I get it caught in a ditch there from oversteer, but managed to pull it out and find out that I can go surprisingly fast on those bumps, although yeah, the second one does kill it. Then again, going over these bumps, and yeah, I get a little too brave going over it. Back down to here to the drops, and yeah, I get caught on something that puts the car to a stop, and I slam down on the ground. Then I lose the rear end through the chicane, and do some impressive flips as the bottle goes off over it. But yeah, it didn't take me too long until I got a decent run with the car. Yeah, put together a run that I was happy with. And yeah, biggest issue I think with this car, to be honest, was just sort of oversteer. The back, it didn't feel all that planted. Otherwise it dealt with bumps fine for what it was. I don't recall having too many issues with any part of the track. It was more just sort of just ease up a bit on some of the harsher bumps, and yeah, just sort of keeping it all stable. It was actually surprisingly nice to get a decent run from. I wouldn't call like its handling or anything sort of groundbreaking, and I wouldn't say it's too fantastic to drive, but definitely not too bad to get a run with some decent pace going through it, going over these bumps now and then. I can begin to increase speed for the long straight, and yeah, getting a bit close to the edge there. Guess a bit of a problem with the lack of stability there. If you do get it even slightly wrong, you really need to back off and get yourself into a position where you can be confident again, because yeah, it's this is definitely a car that you need to be careful with to not sort of push it past its limits, because it will. It can spin on you if it does lose control. Anyway, going over these bumps, I did go fairly slowly, rather carefully, I'd say. Maybe I could have pushed it a bit harder through there. It does tend to deal with bumps alright, but then over the stairs, yeah, as you can see, it bounces around a fair bit and copes with it fine. And then going back down and over the final bump. Yeah, overall, decent enough car, I guess. Just maybe a bit heavy and a bit slow, lacking speed maybe. So next up from Yeshua 1983 is the Owens Arcane, and yeah, overall this was an alright car. I wouldn't say there was anything too wrong with it. I mean, as you can see there, kind of bouncy, and did blow up the bottle. But yeah, it was alright otherwise. Here I maybe got a bit too early on the turn in there and managed to launch the car up into space, which was rather impressive. Definitely got some pretty good height on here. Here just sort of got the entry a bit wrong and clipped the inside, which I assume must have set off the bottle through some way. Yeah, overall I wouldn't say there was anything too terribly bad about this car. It was actually rather decent to drive. can't really say I hated any of it. It was just sort of got the job done. It was decent to drive, and yeah, maybe had a couple of problems here and there. I'd say perhaps my biggest issue was, yeah, getting it stopped, as you can see there. I thought that was a relatively early braking point. I guess not. So yeah, the brakes there maybe could have been improved a bit, but yeah, for the most part it was just a case of positioning it right there. I get a bit of weird airtime there, and catch some quite impressive air as I go over there. In the final section then, sort of coming down these bumps, taking it nice and carefully, and yeah, appear to do alright, and then just get a bit too much speed on the beginning there. But anyway, yeah, onto the final run, and yeah, this was a pretty good start there. It had some decent speed coming into the chicane there. I do get a slightly scary moment as I go over it. Maybe turned in a little late for comfort, but there we go. Managed to get it stopped. Banked a bit on the outside there. Not really going to affect the time much though. But yeah, I managed to. You can actually carry quite a bit of speed over these bumps. I'm a bit cautious around here because it is possible. I mean, as you can see there, I mess up the position and bounce about a bit. But yeah, having a just sort of slowing down a bit more to make sure I can control the car rather than a case of the car not being able to cope with the bumps. Because yeah, it was pretty decent at coping with the bumps. I'd say this was probably a nice balance between sort of coping with the bumps and being nice to drive, actually. So the way I see it is most of the cars here were either really good at keeping the bottle safe, but then they'd sort of be really unstable as they landed, or in the case of the Utes, they'd be nice to drive on road, but when you hit a bump, well, the bottle was almost guaranteed to go boom. So yeah, there were a couple of cars that had a nice middle ground, I think, and yeah, this was one of them. So overall, quite nice to drive. Yeah, definitely. I get a bit too excited on entry there, carry maybe a bit too much speed and get the front caught. So I do get a bit more cautious for the second one, but still, you know, get home with some decent speed. And then here, yeah, I think the front hits the ground as it goes down there. So I don't know, maybe a bit more ride height or something there wouldn't hurt, but yeah, overall pretty decent as we come to the steps, which I take kind of cautiously, and just get over them, and then the final one leading to a big jump, and yeah, no, overall pretty decent car. I am quite, I did quite like that. Anyway, on to the final car, the Velox Avem by Trent445. This was another Ute, but unlike the other two, this had solid axles front and rear, and used a slightly bigger body, which yeah, meant it was actually very different. This was much more sort of, it was a lot nicer on the bottle, but on the flip side, solid axles and everything meant that this was entertaining to drive, to say the least. It yeah, certainly bounced about quite a lot. Low ride height there, catching it out a bit through the dips. But yeah, it just sort of found it very hard to get it controlled, and again clipping that outside banking on it and doing some rather nice flips. Here I just carry a bit too much speed, managed to keep it steady though as it bounces around, and yeah, just sort of keeping it careful and keeping it still. Then I just boot it up the hill, and that's where it catches me out. And yeah, this section by here was proving to be a bit tricky. yeah, as you come down on the second bump, I guess I was carrying too much speed, and because it is still fairly low, it was just bottoming out. And yeah, that caught me out a few times. Here, back just bounces about, and it chucks me into there. Then on these long bumps, just jump to, or go too fast through it, and eventually just throw myself out. But yeah, on to the final run then. And yeah, again, it being a ute, one of the smaller vehicles, does have some decent speed to it in a straight line, even if the solid axle suspension sort of limits it in cornering. The other two utes, I believe, had double wishbones and multi-link stuff, so yeah, a bit less controllable than those, but yeah, I can still carry some good speed in a straight line. It can cope with the bumps a bit, so yeah, I can make some decent use out of it, although it's just a case of being cautious when it comes to the turns. Get a nice line across there to not have too many issues. Get back on the tarmac soon. That sort of helps stop me a bit better. I assume the tarmac has more grip, alright? Makes sense? I'm not actually sure if it's modelled in, but I hope so. Anyway, yeah, I get a bit squirrely as I come over the bumps, but keep it all together as we get to the fastest part of the track, where I can really unleash the power there. And yeah, that's the thing, it's quite light, so accelerates decently, and means that I can, you know, be fairly brave on the brakes. Still, I want to be a bit cautious that I don't go off. Even then, thanks to my fantastic driving ability to do, maybe go slightly wide. Coming then to the final section, just slam on the brakes and pray, make it down, get a bit aggressive down there. And then again, carrying quite a bit of speed into the entry and just sort of hoping that I slow down by the bottom. And this final section, just slowing down a bit. And just making sure I make it out alive after the incident where I explode about here on the bump. Although this time I do manage to make it past. You can see how much it sort of bounces forward and backwards. Which, yeah, isn't great, but yeah, I come over the final section then, and across the line. So there we go, that's all the cars, an explosion to finish. Let's go and review it then. Well, on to the scoring then, and well, first of all, let's look at the times that the cars set. So, well, the fastest car here was from Trent 445 with the Velox M, or AVM, whatever. Yeah, that was, well, the fastest car here, simple as really. Yeah, it set the fastest time, and yeah, meanwhile the slowest car was, well, it would go to El Bruno, with that ute, followed closely by T. Pasotti. Both of those were just so tricky to get even a run to the finish line that, yeah, I had those not particularly great runs, so that was unfortunate, but basically I just couldn't be bothered because it was taking so long. Anyway, then on to how the cars drive, and my favourite car to drive was Red's car, the Gauntlet Acura, mainly because, well, it was just quite a it was a nice car to drive. It wasn't particularly problematic in any section. It was more just sort of watch on the bumps a bit, but it was fine to throw around, and yeah, it was quite enjoyable to drive because of that. And yeah, again, right at the bottom with El Bruno and T. Pasotti, just because it was just impossible to get them over bumps without them blowing up. So yeah, just having to carry or kill a lot of my speed just to make it over bumps and stuff made them quite annoying. But when it was flat, they were quite nice to drive because they had some good acceleration, so points for that. And as we come into the final scores, well, will be Trent 445 taking the victory with 42 points, followed closely by Armour Motors with the Anvil, and then Naya 8 with the Rhino. Actually joint with Echo Waffle 8 with the big truck. So yeah, it was pretty close in the end. I think, yeah, Trent 445 had a really good car to drive in BeamNG. I mean, scoring a 10 and a 9 just because of how quick it was and how fairly easy it was to get around. Like, it did feel quite fun and nice to drive. Maybe a bit... I mean, it wasn't quite as grippy and as sort of thoughtless to drive as I could be with the Gauntlet, but yeah, definitely still a nice car to drive. Nevertheless, so well deserving of the victory. Anyway, thank you for watching. I apologise that it's taken so long for me to get this out. It's, yeah, unfortunate and really not good. But I don't know. I'm not going to make any promises for anything because I'll probably just destroy them. But anyway, thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this. And yeah, until next time, whenever that is, goodbye.